So there is something else that can keep us trapped in a bad dynamic. And that is the idea that marriage is hard or relationships take work. And the thing is, it's more that you encounter hard times, or there are times when there like something has happened, or maybe you're in a different season of things, like after you have children. It shouldn't be that the relationship itself is hard. What ends up happening is if you skip the vetting stage, you end up with somebody who doesn't share your same values, doesn't agree with you on reality, and then you're in this like tug of war for your entire relationship over whose version of reality is going to sort of like win the day. And it's usually going to be the person who's in a dominant position, either psychologically, financially, physically, but basically people that think that they just have a lot of ups and downs. You're either dealing with like people with low self-awareness, or you might be dealing with people who are just fundamentally not compatible. There could be like a mental health situation, or just people that like were very naive when they got together, thinking that like the intense feeling that they had is what love is, which it isn't. That's emotional attachment. That is important, like we need it, but it turns to possessiveness and like a bad dynamic. So dating is not this phase that we want to get through as quickly as possible to get to the good stuff. You want to be able to vet the other person. You want to see who they are. You want to see if that your understanding of reality is like, compatible enough, that you share enough values in common. Because if you don't, you're going to be arguing about that. And then when hard times come, that's going to be disaster. Unless you're that kind of couple that like pulls together for hard stuff and then like can't make it work during the like peaceful times, so you cause like more problems, or you cause like the bigger problems so that you can feel like you're connected. Like humans can be a mess sometimes when we're trying to hold on to something that we shouldn't be. So when you're dating, we don't want to be approaching it like we're applying for a job position. Hey, these are all of my qualifications and skills. What are your qualifications and skills? What are the qualifications for the job? How do we match? Does my resume match your job application, or does your job application match my resume? Like, no. You want to just be spending time in proximity to each other, seeing how somebody acts in different situations. You have ongoing conversations. I gotta tell you, like, if you're in a good relationship, it feels easy. There's an ease to it. You're not struggling. It feels like you're hanging out with your best friend. I know that's not sexy. Nobody ever likes that answer. Oh, it should feel like your best friend. But like, it should feel like your best friend. That sort of like ease. Now, if you are somebody who is a highly agreeable person, right? The Ocean's, the 5-factor personality assessment. So it's openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. If you are high in agreeableness and you basically just sort of go with the flow for a lot of things, you might be with like a very dominant personality, but like it doesn't bother you because you go with the flow. And then you run into problems later because you've really never asserted yourself or said no. But then something comes along later that you feel very passionately about, and that's a place you put your foot down. Well, now there's a bunch of conflict in your relationship that you didn't expect because it's always been easy. So in that vetting stage, you don't want to be just going along with the flow. Even if that's like kind of your normal personality, you want to be able to see how somebody responds to no, whether or not they're giving you space to be your own individual person. And so there's like a lot of moving pieces, but basically the vetting stage is we're not trying to jump skip this. We're not trying to like get to the relationship part. And the reason why we're not trying to do that is once we're in a relationship, we feel obligated. Like there are things that we're supposed to do, and that we're supposed to stay together and we're supposed to work on stuff, and that we've essentially made a promise, and that we need to negotiate and compromise. And when we haven't vetted appropriately, the things that we're negotiating or compromising are, it's our identity, or it's our perspective on reality. And you cannot be in that position, because then it's a fight, right? You're no longer in a relationship. You're low-key in a dominance over reality. And that's usually not going to go well for the person who is, not as dominant psychologically or physically, or has as much resources. So we want to vet. We want to see if we share values in common. And we want to give the relationship time for people to show who they are. And we don't want to get super excited and think that this is it. We found the person, they're the one. We build that together. We become soulmates for each other. There is no one person made for you. When you think that way, you take out the fact that love is it's not binding. Hans Wilhelm, he says, love is linking, not binding. Love links us together, but it doesn't bind us to each other. And so when you come to relationships with like a soulmate perspective, that's a very trapping perspective, because you think, oh, this is my soulmate, and it has to work, and I can't leave this person, and I've made promises, and we're bound by these ideas and things that we think of as being like good values, love, loyalty, patience, kindness. And sometimes we need to not have patience. We need to not be kind, or being kind is in setting a boundary and ending a situation. It's not kind to allow someone to continue to overwrite who we are. You aren't in a relationship if you aren't two individual people. You have to be present just as much as they're present. So we are not jump skipping the relationship, the vetting stage, to get to the relationship stage. Because once we're in the relationship stage, we start mentally thinking in ways that we've made a promise, or we have an obligation to this person, that we can't just cut and run. Even though you do not need to stay in a relationship. Even if you promise to love them forever, this is not a contract. You can love them from a distance. I love you so much. I don't want to be a party to you hurting people, and that people includes me. So, for some reason, we really want to turn relationships into a binding contract, and that is wholly inappropriate. That is not how relationships should be. There cannot be love if there isn't freedom. Freedom to say no, freedom to be yourself, freedom to choose, freedom to leave. Anyway, I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.